Hello, I'm Jackie Jones of Jones & Associates Law PC, your family fixer, and today we are talking estate planning during COVID-19, wills and trusts, everything you need to know. Now, while we're doing that, I am going to start a watch party on my private page because apparently people cannot figure out how to get from my business page, which you guys are all on because you guys are amazing, to my personal, from my personal page to my business page or whatever. I don't know. But I'm really excited to talk about this topic because I thought probably 2 weeks ago when we were really starting to hunker in place that this would be absolutely the thing that we should be talking about. And I found that I was not getting a lot of questions about it at first. So, of course, I thought, well, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe people aren't as concerned about estate planning. Maybe they aren't as concerned about wills and trusts as I thought they would be. And yet I put the call out there this weekend. And yeah, everyone was asking about wills. They were asking about wills. They were asking about trusts. They were asking about what to do with their estate plan as we sit here. And basically, I think we just found out yesterday that we're actually going to be in for at least another 30 days by order of the White House. So let's go. I don't know. Hey, Josie. I don't know what you guys have for lunch because this is a lunch and learn. And basically I have tea because I'm a tea drinker. Love this cup. Got it from another fabulous attorney, Esmia Vasquez Ward, and a New Jersey attorney. So if you guys have New Jersey questions, I will definitely forward those to Esmia. She is always working and she knows a lot. Hey, Thomas. So let's get started on the important things. Let's start with number one. Do you need a will? I wrote some notes this time, right? I wrote notes. I believe everyone should have a will. And I am really guilty of this because I need a new will. I'm really bad. Do not take my inability to get my stuff done as a sign, because I get everyone else's wills done. I really need to redo mine. And my child reminded me. She's like, well, what does your will say happens to us if something happens to you? And I was like, oh my gosh. I've raised them well. So, one, you need a will. Now, you do not have to have an attorney to have a will. Unless you're someplace like Delaware, because I see a Delaware resident on. Delaware does encourage attorneys, and in fact, you have to have an attorney, if you have them, from your own state. That means that if you live in Delaware, New Jersey, you can't ask me to write your will because that would be called the unauthorized practice of law. Now, that's funny because you can literally go to Staples and buy a package to make a will, right? And people do it. And I've actually had to litigate an estate that was worth multi-millions of dollars, and they paid me and my firm over $120,000 litigating because they had gone to a place like that. Excuse me, I won't say which of the office supply stores. I'm just because I don't want them to get sued or something. They had gone to one of those office supply stores and they had purchased a will and they filled it out, and it was in litigation for over a year. I felt like such a great attorney because I got to do all this stuff, but it cost them over $120,000. That should never have happened. I mean, it shouldn't have been that much. So do not just go to an office supply store, okay? Now, as I've told you before, when this pandemic first started, on an absolute emergency basis only, Pennsylvania and some other states accept something called a holographic will. A holographic will essentially means that you write the entire will by hand and sign it by hand. It's good old-fashioned writing. That's right. That means no typing and filling in the blanks, good old-fashioned writing. It is not favored generally because, people miss a lot of stuff. But if you are in an emergency situation, you write everything by hand. This is my last will and testament. You sign it, you date it. Everything is written by hand. No typings, no nothing, stricken, whatever. The courts are likely to accept it. That's not preferred, though. That's not preferred. Now, you want to meet with your attorney and talk about your specific situation. Now, I'm going to go through a couple of things today. I'm going to go through wills. I'm going to go through trusts. I'm going to go through special kinds of trusts. And then I'm going to talk about what we're specifically doing during the pandemic. So please stay tuned so you don't miss any of the important stuff. Now, let's talk about why you might need a will if you are single, right? You're like, I'm single. I don't have anybody to worry about. Like, what do I need a will for? Well, you're single. You don't have anyone who is responsible for you, maybe no kids, no spouse, but you also have no one who is ultimately responsible for your stuff. Like, are your parents able to take over your home? Are they able to get in and clean out your apartment in case something happens? Are they going to be able to access your bank accounts? You may not think you have much, and you may not have much. I don't know. But even a simple, inexpensive will can be helpful, because there are a lot of people who will not just hand things over to your family without opening a estate. And sometimes estates don't need to be opened because there's not a lot there. But there are some ways to do sort of a small estate without going through all the big expensive stuff that will allow people to close out your bank accounts, close out your charge accounts, clean out your apartment, do those sort of things. So yes, I'm recommending a will, even if you don't have a lot of stuff or people to worry about, right? Let's talk about also if you are a spouse, you're married to someone. You may think, I don't need a will. Why would I need a will? Because everything automatically goes to my spouse. And yes, on some level that is true. But there may be things that there were yours prior to the marriage, and you may have family members who have come in and they want to make claims against things. I'm sorry, even in the midst of a pandemic, people can be jerks. All of us, and I see other attorneys on the line, all of us who've dealt with this kind of stuff have experienced families fighting over very little. Sometimes they're fighting over big money, but a lot of times they're fighting over very little. In fact, there have been recent deaths where I've heard and something happened that actually I've seen happen a lot. The person has died. Family is still grieving. The body may have just been taken away, and somebody shows up at the house and tries to start taking things. Yes, this happened again last week. I know people who went through this. Someone showed up and tried to start taking things. Sometimes those things are things like guns, which obviously have to be disposed of in a special way. If someone passed away, it could be family heirlooms. It could be documents that are needed. And so you just want to be protecting yourself in all the ways that you can. Now, again, I'd like everyone, if you are listening, just please feel free to just drop a comment. Let me know you're listening. I'm on the right track. Let me know what your questions are, because I don't want to miss any questions either. I'm watching just to see as questions pop up so I can answer them. Now, so you want to make sure that you are dealing with any family drama in the best way you can. And one of the best ways to do that is to have a will, even if you think, well, I just have my spouse and my spouse is going to take everything. Okay. So just preparation. You may not think it's going to be your family. It may not be your family, but you would be surprised at how avarice, greedy people become when someone passes away. And you just don't want that, especially in the midst of a global pandemic. And I'm looking at my notes. Let's also talk about if you have children. Now, if you have a spouse and you have children, you have special reason to want to get your estate planned. And we're still talking about wills. We haven't gotten to trust, so we will. Let's talk about why you want to do that. For one, the Pennsylvania law, like all states, actually has rules about how things are distributed absent a will. So, in our case, if you have children, for instance, who do not belong to your spouse will get the first $30,000 plus 1/2 of the estate. So that means that your spouse will take the first share of everything, and then they're splitting it between them and the children. So you want to say how you want things to happen. So for instance, you may be saying, listen, I want to put some provisions around for my children who were not of our marriage. Maybe they're young, and I want to make sure that they can still be supported because I won't be there to pay child support. Or maybe my spouse is elderly and my children are grown and can take everything, and I just want my spouse I've been with for 30 years to get everything to take care of him or herself because I don't want them to lose the house or lose things. They needed my income, whatever it is. You want to think about how this should work best for your family. If you have adult children, you may want everything to go to your spouse. Or like a friend of mine, he was planning to build things because he wanted his adult children to be able to have real estate empire. And so he has certain things that are for his spouse, including their marital home and maybe their additional properties. But he has properties that he's been purchasing for the sole purpose of sharing them with the children so the children can learn how to buy properties and make money off of properties. So those are some of the things that you want to think about. How do I want my estate to be handled? You also don't want to set up a situation if you already know your spouse and your children have issues with one another. You don't want to set up a situation where they are fighting, because that sometimes comes into play as well. I also have estates where perhaps you have now the child is taking care of the step parent, because the step parent may not have any additional children. However, they, technically speaking, have somewhat different interests because they are now sharing an estate or portions of an estate. You want to think about this. People don't always think about this. Or the other thing a lot of people used to do, and I think they still do, is say, well, I want a life estate and my spouse, but the child gets to own it. So what they say is, I don't want my husband or wife to be kicked out of our home that maybe I purchased before the marriage and it belongs to me only. But what happens is, I want a life estate so that my spouse can always live in the house. But then my child will inherit it after my spouse either goes into a nursing home or passes away. This is something people do maybe when they get married older in life, or when they pass away older in life, and, you know, they have their own things and they have their own kids and they've lived together or lived apart for years and years because they were older when they got married. Now, here's the concern with that. If you do something like that, you want to make sure your spouse actually can afford to pay the taxes and upkeep on the property, because that will be their responsibility pending their moving out of the property. So you don't necessarily want a situation where you, again, putting your children tug of wars with your spouse. Now, it's a little different if your children belong to your spouse. Like, we've been married the whole time, we have the same kids, because then, yes, as the spouse, you're pretty much the person that inherits everything, right? And then when they pass away, they get to give it all to your kids. So it's a different situation. But when there are minor children, this becomes even more important, because people want to leave things to their minor children without understanding that children they can inherit, but they can't manage inheritances the same way adults can. So you don't want to say, I have a $250,000 life insurance policy that I want to give to my 2-year-old or my 10-year-old, or sometimes even your 17 or 18-year-old. You know how they are. Why do I say this? Because if you are under the age of majority, you cannot access that money. So let's say this. Let's say I wanted my children to get my life insurance policy so that they can pay for college. And again, I don't advise for that either, because the way it looks right now is that if you're a parent and they're looking at your income for purposes of college, they will look at 6% of your income. But if they're looking at the child's income for purposes of college, they will look at 50% of their income. So just be careful about putting money in children's names. It's not in like a 529 plan or some kind of plan specifically for schooling. Okay, so here's what I'm saying. Now, this is what happens. We are in a situation where we say, I want my child to have this $250,000 life insurance policy. The child is 10 years old. Well, a 10-year-old can't keep it. So what the court is going to do is they're going to hold it in trust until that child is 18. There are two problems here, and I think you see one of them. One of them is your 18-year-old is going to have $250,000. You know what's happening. We all know what's happening when that kid gets that money, right? They can't. I mean, my daughter right now, like, if she gets $10, she's out there buying stuff, and she's 17. I'm like, you got $50. What are you doing? Why do you need something that has a name brand on it? But okay. But the other thing is, your child may need help. Like, you may be saying, let's talk if you're a single parent, right? You're a single parent, which means your other parent is not going to be there to take care of the child, maybe through death. Maybe they have issues where they just have never been involved in the child's life, and someone else is going to have to take care of them. Maybe your parents or friends or whatever. Now, I would do what I needed to do, and we all know that. When my brother died, I took on his 2 kids. I did not get any insurance money. I did not get any income. I just did it, right? But everyone can't do that. And if something were to happen to me, whoever gets them is not going to be in that position. They're going to have money. And this is why. Because if I have this life insurance policy and I got hundreds of thousands of dollars of life insurance for this reason, I want whoever, I really need to get my new will done, because otherwise use this in court. I want whoever is caring for them to have what they need so that my children have the lifestyle that they're used to. I want them to still have their own bedrooms in the house. I want them to go to a good school. I want them to still be able to do a family vacation like we used to. I want when they need a new phone, or when they want AirPods, or when they want special little things that I did for them, I want them to still have it. I want them to have quality of life. I don't want them suffering from losing yet another parent and then struggling financially. Which means that I have to set up my estate in such a way that the children are going to get access through a guardian. Okay? And what I mean by a guardian is if you don't set one, the courts will set one for you. Yeah. So this is what will happen. You'll say, okay, I want this money for my child. And the court will say, well, we're going to leave it in a account somewhere. And we're going to appoint somebody guardian who's probably going to take fees out of it. But even if you say, well, I want it to be used for their well-being, then the court will say, fine, we'll appoint a lawyer or somebody who will say, oh, you need clothes? Well, we think $100 is enough. Oh, you want to go on a school trip? No, we think that you should only go to the local trip. You shouldn't be. Oh, you got admitted to a program at Yale for the summer? Well, we think $3,000 is too much. You should go to the local camp instead. I mean, think about all the opportunities my kids have had and your kids have had that we may have struggled to put them through. You know, hey, this program is really important to me. But you have someone else making a decision on their life and their lifestyle and what matters. You don't want that. So you want to appoint an appropriate guardian and a backup guardian who can do these things and who can care for your child. You may also want to consider whether your spouse is going to be that person. And it's not automatically your spouse. It's not automatically the other parent either. I have a case right now I'm dealing with where dad passed away. Mom has custody of the kids, has always had primary custody of the kids. She wanted to go get them life insurance money. They told her, we need you to get a guardianship. What? Like what? Like all she wants to do is get the money and put it in an account for the kids. But the insurance company wants a guardianship. Now, do I want to fight with the insurance company over how that's not necessary? No, because at the end of the day, these kids are still going to be suffering without what they need from a father who's no longer paying child support and a mother who's right now stuck in a pandemic. I don't know what her financial situation is during the course of this. I'm going to call her. But these are the things that happen because we don't think about them. Now, here are some other things we have to think about. Not only our children who are minors, our children who are almost adults, how old we want them to be when they inherit this money, right? Because you don't want your 18-year-old inherited. You don't want your 18 and 22-year-old inherited because you don't want all their inheritances to be taken up by college. You want them to have enough to live off of, but you don't want a college to come in and take everything, right? Because you want them to get a good start in life. That's the reason you're doing this. So think about that. Because someone just dropped me a line and make sure that you are still hearing me, that you're hearing me, and that these are answering your questions so I can know that I'm doing the right thing. Because I'm live. For anyone watching this later, I'm live at the time, and I just want to make sure that people are still hearing me. I'm getting questions. Okay. Here are some other things to consider. Special needs trust. Why am I saying this? Many of you know what it's like to have a child who has a special need, whether they have an IEP, a 504 plan, whether they have other forms of disabilities, and they need to qualify for things like Medicaid. One of the issues is that as they become older, you cannot have them qualify for a lot of these programs if they have a lot of money. So you don't want to just, hey, I'm going to give you $100,000. You know why? Because all their care, all these special therapists and doctors and medications will take up that money immediately. And then the child will have to reapply and requalify for Medicaid, which could mean that they miss some of their services that are crucial in their life, okay? So what you want to do is consider a special needs trust. Even not during the pandemic, parents who have children with disabilities, we talk about this a lot, you need the special needs trust because that money is clearly set aside to help this child with their needs, and it does not disqualify them from Medicaid and other benefits. Listen to me here. It does not disqualify them. That is so essential. It's so essential because if you have a child who is dealing with these special needs, you have a child who you cannot pay for all the care that they need. You know, there's a lot of people who have that. You're going to need to make sure that they're not inheriting large sums of money, something that will throw them out of the system, and you'll have to keep going back and forth trying to get in and out of the system. You don't want to do that. You just want to make sure they have continuity of their services because they're really, really important. Now, some other people have asked for some things about trust in general. In general, you don't need to trust, okay? If you're watching me on your phone, you probably don't need to trust. And if you do need to trust and you're watching me on your phone, I will gladly take your money. Thank you. Why do I say that? Because generally the rules change slightly, but at the end of the day, for the most part, if you're not making if you don't have like $1 million or something, you're probably not going to need a trust. Okay. There are different there are different considerations. We look at your amounts of money. We look at what you're projected to make. We look at how things are handled, whether it's in stocks, whether it's in bonds, whether it's in cash. But generally speaking, if you don't have a lot of money, you probably don't need a trust. You are not as special as you think you are. Except, like I said, trust may be for your children in some cases, to make sure there's a guardian or someone who can use money in a way that helps them, or a special needs trust for a child, whether they be an adult or a minor who has special needs. So let's talk about that. But let's also consider that we're in a position right now where, because of the global pandemic, people are not sure how they are going to be able to get this will to be legal. For the most part, what we usually do with the will is we have you sign in front of us and my notary. It's notarized, and we have 2 witnesses. The reason we do that is because we want to have something called a self-proofing will. Basically, that when you pass away, which could be however long from now, we can take it down to the courthouse, to the Register of Wills, and we can say, here it is, and there's the witnesses, and the notarization is enough for this will to be admitted to probate. And probate is that process where we make everything happen in the will. It's just the easiest way to put it. All the stuff you write down, we make it happen through probate. What we do is we can submit that to the Register of Wills, and because it's self-proving, meaning it has the 2 witnesses and notarization, they can admit it for probate right now. Here's the deal. We are in a pandemic. There are a couple of ways to do this, and this is some of the stuff I'm going on right now. There's a couple of ways to do this. One, with my clients, I've created a new form that is specifically for people who have either single or a couple handling a will. Those forms will be available on my website. Right now, they are available to anyone who has set up an appointment with me, which you can also do through the website, and I send them to you. But I'm going to put them on the website because I'm developing a plan, kind of a one-shot-you-go plan, which is going to be something like this. It's going to be complete the form, do it online, like a Zoom meeting, get a first draft, make the changes, get a final draft, and you're done. Like, it's going to be like a wham bam. My team and I are going to be trying to get these out, as quickly as possible during the pandemic. And I'm trying to come up with a plan that's going to make this easy for everyone. That's why it's been taking me a little bit, because I want to make sure it's fair to you, but I also want to make sure that it's fair to me and my staff, so I can pay someone to help me. Okay. But what we're doing right now is, because technically speaking, you don't have to have the 2 witnesses. You can just sign and have it notarized without the 2 witnesses. Why am I saying that? I'm saying that because it will not be self-proofing. I will still have to go and get someone who knows you to say, hey, I recognize their signature and sign off, and that will let us probate the estate, but it will still be a valid will. Okay. So that's important. And also remember, keep the original, That's all I have to say, because probating a copy is really, really hard. If you can't keep the original, then you can pay for a safe deposit box. You can have us keep it in some kind of place and pay us to handle the storage, but just please keep the original to be used. Okay. But we can do that where it can be something called e-notarized. Pennsylvania allows for e-notarization, so do a lot of other states. Now, I have yet to use e-notarization. I have gone online. I have found several different companies that do it. I have chosen one that I'm thinking about. I have not committed because I think that I would need a number of clients who are interested in it so that I can make it cost specific, and I can say, okay, I'm going to add the e-notarization to your process for this amount of money, and I want a couple of people to do it because I want to try to save and spread the cost out as much as possible so that people aren't suddenly coming up with, like, my will used to cost X, but now it costs $50 to $100 more just for the e-notarization. Obviously, I won't charge you my time to do that. I'm just trying to make sure that we can compensate the e-notarization platform, and I'm looking at a couple. So if you're interested in that and you're interested in one of our programs, let me know, drop me a line, send me a message, whatever. I'm going to be working on that. The other thing is banks are still open. I'm not encouraging this, but I'm just letting you know, because banks are technically still open, many of them offer notarization services. And you can slide over your ID and be 6 feet away. So if you and 2 witnesses are willing to go to the bank and schedule an appointment to get it notarized, most likely what they will have you do is slide over your ID, sign where they can see you but not be right next to you, and you can still get the proper 2 signatures. This may also be important for powers of attorney. You know what? I need to do a class on powers of attorney. Maybe Friday. We'll see. Because Wednesday, we are going to be talking about custody exchanges. Wednesday's Lunch and Learn is custody exchanges during COVID-19. So there are a couple of options. Just want to make sure I got all my notes. Yes. There are a couple of options. So if you feel more comfortable staying at home and doing an e-notarization, yes, let's do that. If you feel more comfortable going to a bank and having it fully witnessed and notarized, here's how we do it. Okay, Josie's question, best way to spread out a policy of $250,000 for one child being 20, not in the best place. Josie, in your kid situation, and we need to talk about it, I would absolutely consider a trust. Not a special needs trust per se, but a trust that is managed by someone else, someone that can make a determination on whether or not she's in a good place. So, for instance, the trust can make sure it pays for housing for her, so that she has a safe place to stay, but does not give her cash directly. We call those, where's Kevin? Kevin, you were on here. Spendthrift. We call the spendthrift trust. That's right. Because sometimes we have family members who are unable to manage their money, or they, or quite frankly, they're just a mess. Some of us know what it's like to have family members who are a mess. I do. And so what we do is we do a spendthrift trust that will actually prevent them from having access to certain things. If you have someone who's out of state, we can still do your estate plan. Like, we can 100% do your estate plan here in the state that you live in. But we can work with an attorney in the other jurisdiction, maybe where that person lives, so that we can develop someone who can be the guardian, or we can develop someone who can deal with the trust aspect. So in those cases, you might need a trust. It could be a trust that goes into effect at your death, or it can be, sometimes we have trusts that we do before someone dies, so we have those trusts. So there's a lot of different options. Now, I have gone through all the things on my notes today. If you have questions, I'm going to give you a moment to drop them here. While you're dropping your questions, I'm going to give you an overview of some of the things we're doing. One, I've talked about the possibility of having a Zoom meeting so that people can ask questions kind of all in a group about these things. If you're interested, let me know. I only do it if I have enough interest. Most people don't feel comfortable in those settings, but if you feel like, hey, I just want to kind of bounce around ideas and see what other people are dealing with, we can do like a Zoom meeting. So let's talk about that. Wednesday, April 1st, 2020, we are doing another one of these Lunch and Learns, and the Lunch and Learn is going to be specifically about custody exchanges. I've already talked about custody during COVID-19. We're talking exchanges specifically because a lot has come up about that, not only in courts, but with my clients, because y'all crazy. Yeah, a lot of calls. Actually, this week, well, it's only Monday, so I can't say it's been better. But yeah. And then we can also talk specifically about powers of attorney. I know you said you guys wanted to hear about that, so maybe we'll try to get that in this week as well. If you have any questions, drop me now. If you have a question later, just hashtag replay and put your question in, and I will try to find a way to either get an answer to you or to do a video to answer it if it really needs to be. At any rate, it has been wonderful having Lunch and Learn with you today. My lunch has been tea. I think my lunch will also be some food in a few minutes. But it's been wonderful having all of you. Thank you so much. Oh, I should have checked the watch party and see if there were questions. Why don't I don't know how to check the watch party and see if there are questions. Okay. At any rate, I'm Jackie Jones of Jones & Associates Law, PC. Thank you so much for spending this time with me during your coronation. It's no longer a coronation, but I'm just going to continue to act like I'm enjoying this. At any rate, if you have questions, contact me. Website, www.mychesterlawyer.com. And this week, we're going to have our pandemic planning tab added so you can see some of these videos and you can see what other resources we are coming up with to help you. You have a great day. Thank you.